Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. Modern can be expensive, we all know this, but if you want to rise through the ranks, conquer events, and be the best there ever was, you're going to need a top tier deck, right? Good thing there are plenty of top tier decks in Modern. In this video, I'm going to show you the cheapest tier 1 decks that can absolutely win you a Grand Prix. Which Grand Prix? Ask, how about GP Vegas? Coming up real soon, I'm going to be there the entire time. If you can go, you definitely should. Modern Grand Prix, Limited Grand Prix, spell slinging against me and a bunch of other creators and pros. This is the GP of the year. Just go if you can, it'll be so sick. Also, deck lists of all the strategies I'm talking about today will be in the description so you can check them out yourselves and see just how cheap they are. Anywho, plugs over. Let's talk Modern decks. I do hope you enjoy the video, and if you do, remember that like button helps out a lot. We're starting off our list with the 5th cheapest tier 1 competitive Modern deck that can absolutely win you a Grand Prix, Amulet Titan. After the downfall of Summer Bloom, players thought that this deck would go away. That has definitely not happened. The core of the deck is still there. For those who don't know, Amulet Titan is named after Amulet of Vigor and Primeval Titan. Amulet of Vigor has fun and exciting synergy with bounce lands. Simic Growth Chamber, for instance. It enters the battlefield, and before you have to bounce something, it untaps, letting you tap it for 2 mana seems decent to me. The deck also includes a number of setup cards like Ancient Stirring, Serum Visions, Lotus Bloom, and Azusa. Half of this deck is designed to ramp like crazy to get your Primeval Titan or Hive Mind onto the battlefield. Once you do that, the fun starts. Primeval Titan is the primary win condition in this deck as it grabs absurd cards like Sunhome Fortress of the Legion and Slayer Stronghold, allowing the Titan to attack right away, and Double Strike triggering itself a heck of a bunch of times, getting even more lands in the process. Now, if that doesn't work, you can go another route and win with Hive Mind. You're ramping out these cards and your opponent probably isn't caught up on mana yet, which means you drop this Hive Mind and say a Pact of Negation or Summoner's Pact, force your opponent to pay it on their upkeep because they copy the spell. They can't pay it, they lose the game. Another delicious way to win the game. Amulet Titan is a solid strategy that can win any tournament, and it registers in at around $550 when optimally built. You do have expensive pieces and engineered explosives in Amulet of Vigor, but the vast majority of the deck is made up of cards under $10 each, most of the lands under $1 each. Super fun to play, a lot of gold fishing if you enjoy that. It's a great strategy. The 4th cheapest tier 1 deck that can win any Modern tournament is Ad Nauseam. A combo deck that's been around a long time, Ad Nauseam wins the game, at least most of the time, by casting a gigantic lightning storm at your opponent's face. Now, this combo deck is a combo deck for all combo decks. It's a combo deck's combo deck, or something to that effect. First, you need to cast Angel's Grace or Phyrexian Unlife so you don't die. Then play your Ad Nauseam, which basically draws out your entire deck into your hand, including your lands, spells, Lightning Storm, everything. Then discard a bunch of your lands, use a Lightning Storm to just wreck your opponent, and have multiple Pact of Negation backup in case they try to be cheeky. Obviously, there's a lot more complexity to the deck than this, but that's how you win most of the time. The rest of the deck is built upon alternate win conditions and ways to get your combo out as fast as possible. The strategy often includes Laboratory Maniac as an alternate win condition, and a hilarious one at that. Spoils of the Vault makes a common appearance to grab your necessary combo piece while you have an active Grace or Unlife so you don't die. There's a bunch of ramp and fixing and Lotus Bloom and Pentad Prism and Simian Spirit Guide. Then the deck is rounded out with Sleight of Hand and Serum Visions, again, at least most of the time, to help you get your combo faster. This deck is very much a solitaire deck. You do your own thing and hope you can go off before your opponent figures out what's going on, has an answer for it, or kills you before you can kill them. It's a pretty cool strategy and around $530 right now. The mana base is pretty fragile and includes some important cards like Dark Slick Shores and Seachrome Coast. Pact of Negation and Ad Nauseam are also not cheap, but the rest of the deck is pretty reasonable. Most cards cost around the same. It's solid tiered strategy that can absolutely win you games and tournaments. I know some of you are going to disagree, but the next deck we're talking about is Merfolk. This deck is often touted as tier 2, but the fish people can absolutely win entire tournaments. They've done it before. Merfolk is a real travel strategy with a solid control element. You can absolutely go into a tournament with this deck and come out with a solid record, if not even better. It's a pretty straightforward strategy. You load up on the best Merfolk available to you, Lord of Atlantis, Master of the Pearl Trident, Master of Waves, Marrow Reejery. Then you add in some solid value Merfolk like Silvergill Adept and Harbinger of the Tides. This creature suite is dang dangerous to deal with and pretty difficult to fight on the ground easily. When you get your board state going, even 2 or 3 of these together make for a rough time. The deck explodes by using Aether Vial to cheat in Adepts, Harbingers, whatever you like. It also uses Spreading Seas to mess up mana and give you Island Walk, Spell Pierce for early game disruption, and Dismember for early game removal. The deck runs really low to the ground and wins games relatively quickly once you've set yourself up. Countering or removing a single threat can mean the entire game. That's how big these fish can get. Now, the majority of the cost in this deck is focused in two places. First, Aether Vial. A necessary card in the strategy for Aether Vial make up almost 30% of the deck's total cost at $130. The other money pit, the lands. You may think you need 4 Cavern of Souls in this deck, you don't. That's the saving grace. You only need 1, maybe 2 if that. Manamo is expensive, however, so is Mutavault and Aboro. These land choices are strategic. Separating basic and non-basic lands is important, so you want to be able to afford most of these. All in all, the entire deck is going to run you around $450. Unfortunately, there are no budget replacements for any of the expensive cards that will keep Merfolk competitive, so if you want to make a deep run at a Grand Prix, $450 is going to do it for sure. Again, good price for a super competitive deck. Number 2 on our list, the second cheapest optimized top-tier modern deck is Death and Taxes. Players have a love-hate relationship with this, and that's understandable. The deck is designed to make you hate playing against it. It's a prison deck in a lot of ways, except it's a prison deck with way better answers and reach than most any prison deck you've played against before. There are tempo-ruining cards like Leonin Arbiter and Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, flicker machines like Eldrazi Displacer, Flicker Wisp, and Restoration Angel, joined by Blade Splicer for a billion golems, Wall of Omens for cards all day long, and Selfless Spirit to protect everything. Joined by Thought Not Seer and newcomer Shalai Voice of Plenty, you can see how annoying a deck like this can be. Eldrazi and Taxes, as some have come to call it, is a brutal strategy that's really difficult to deal with when you're trying to 1-for-1 them with your spells. They add in Aether Vial for even more instant speed nonsense, Path to Exile and Dismember for cheap top tier removal, and you have a deck that's just annoying, to be honest. It's quite resilient, and you can almost never count it out of a game. The reason why this deck is just so dang insane is because of Flicker Wisp and Eldrazi Displacer together. Flicker Wisp is one of, if not the most powerful card in this deck. When it's on the battlefield with Eldrazi Displacer, you can use its exile trigger at will, which means you can wreck anything until the beginning of the next end step. Anything. You can exile your opponent's planeswalkers at the beginning of their upkeep so they don't get them ever. You can exile attackers, blockers, lands, whatever you want for an entire turn. And with the Displacer instant speed, whenever you want. That's what makes this deck truly a prison deck. Once you have the mana to back this up, your opponent's removal is nonsense. Their attacks are nonsense. If they're trying to play anything close to a fair game of Magic, it's nonsense. This deck can be debilitating and it can win a Grand Prix. It can win your F&M easily. This is a real tier deck and it'll set you back around $400. Majority of the cost is in the Aether Vials, which are pretty necessary for this version. But other than that, the most expensive card in the deck is Mutavault, so all things considered, pretty dang cheap for a tier deck, let me tell ya. We made it. It's time to talk about the best and cheapest tier 1 modern deck. And when I say tier 1, I mean right now, one of the single best decks in the entire format, Blue-Red Storm. This deck is it incarnate. The idea is to abuse the Storm mechanic to a point that is just hilarious. This is a combo deck through and through, the end goal being casting Grape Shot with enough Storm triggers to wipe out an opponent in a single shot. Or rather 20 shots, but you get what I mean. You accomplish this by cycling through spells at a feverish pace. You use cheap cantrips like Serum Visions, Opt, and Sleight of Hand to grab Desperate Ritual, Pyretic Ritual, Manamorphose, and just keep the spell train rolling. Gifts Ungiven lets you get your Past in Flames into the yard. You have Remand and Unsubstantiate to protect yourself. Then Baral and Goblin Electromancer to give you so much more value and efficiency with your spells. If we're being honest, Baral is what brought this deck back to the mainstream and made it totally insane. Baral, crazy good. What makes this deck so appealing to play right now, in addition to its crazy high win rate, is the price point. For this tier 1 deck, one of the best in the format, $300. I know that might seem like a lot, but it really isn't, considering the average price of a tiered modern deck is around $1,000, if not a bit higher. The majority of the cost of this deck comes from the lands, Steam Vents and Spirebluff Canal. As a matter of fact, the only card in the deck that is even close to $10 each is Manamorphose. It's completely ridiculous how this deck can be so dang cheap but so effective. It has more success than any of the other decks we've looked at today, and if you're going to any Grand Prix or F&M or any big event at all, Storm can win you that event. This deck is pedigree, it's tier 1, it's a real deck, $300. Click the link in the description just saying, I want to make this entire video just to say this about Storm. Just buy it, it's a dumb deck. And again, remember, you can check out all the decks I talked about today in the description below. This list was about finding the cheapest top tier modern decks. If I missed a deck that you think should be on here, it just hasn't won enough, or the average cost of the deck might be a bit higher than the version you're playing. I hope that you found this video helpful, and I hope to see a bunch of you at Grand Prix Vegas coming up real soon. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. This video is brought to you in part by TCGplayer.com. We've looked at a solid number of decks today, all of them with amazing results under their belts, but Storm is the Mac Daddy. This deck is crazy good and so cheap. If you're interested in it, links are in the description, but if you want some cheapness right now, Gifts Ungiven is the shiz. For only $6 right now, you can get copies of the Bomb Instant. Super cheap considering how good it is. Again, click the link on the screen if you want. It helps the channel. We all get to hug. It's great. Enjoy.